No single family suffered a greater loss on September 11th than the family that is the fire department of the city of New York. More than 300 firefighters died in the line of duty, died heroes. The responsibility for making sure each and every one was accorded the honors due a hero fell to a band of brothers. 343 New York City firemen died under the rubble of the World Trade Center. But a New York City Fire Department tradition is living on, stronger than ever and more significant than anyone could have imagined. For 40 years, a small band of brothers, full-time firefighters and part-time musicians, have performed at the department occasions, the happy and the sad, the weddings, the parades, and every once in a while, the funerals. But since September 11th, every once in a while has become every day, and on some days, every few hours. By the time we share our Thanksgiving dinners, the band will have played at about 300 services. The snare of drums and the bellowing of bagpipes has been echoing in the canyons and suburbs of New York City ever since September 11th.
We played at many other funerals over the years, but this has been just, it's like almost every day.
And you go from one to the next, and it's the same. You never get used to it.
The 70 members of the New York City Fire Department Emerald Society Pipes and Drums have hung up their firemen's helmets and donned kilts full time.
I've played more in 6 weeks, buried more guys in 6 weeks than I've done in 23 years as a firefighter.
But they know burying them all is not likely. Only a few firemen in these ruins have been identified. For most, this will be their final burial ground. For those who are found, there are funerals. For the rest, memorial services. And the band will be there for all of them. The men plan to be playing at churches beyond Christmas.
I love this job so much.
Jimmy Genty is a founding member of the Pipes and Drums. Like several others, Genty is retired from the fire department, but not from the band.
It's something that we have to do when we want to do because of the great loss and the brotherhood in the job.
Brian Grogan has spent 20 years with the department, 16 as a bagpiper.
Before September 11th, you played funerals, you played memorial services, but thanks to God, there weren't that many. After September 11th, it's been constant. What's that like?
Reminds me of that movie, Groundhog's Day, when every day just doesn't stop.
Has there been a morning where you just said to yourself, I want to do this, but I just can't do it. I can't do it today?
Every morning I say it, but I get up and I go.
Tim Grant is leader of the band.
A lot of people, they lose a family member or they lose a friend. Maybe it might have been a young person, an old person, grandfather or something like that. It's usually one person, one at a time, you know. So everybody here knows 20, 30 people. When do you ever in your life lose that many people in one day that you know?
It is routine to have 10 services a day. One Saturday, there were 21. The band often is spread so thin that only a few players can show up at each service. Tom McEnroe remembers doing 4 in one day.
We started at 10 o'clock in the morning, we did a 10, a 1, a 4, and a 7 o'clock at night.
Many days, the men travel hundreds of miles, driving from church to places like the Bronx, where Sean Talon was mourned. Talon was a trainee, 2 weeks short of his 27th birthday, single, a former U.S. Marine. But more often, the pipers and drummers find themselves playing miles from the city, in the suburbs, where most firemen and their families now live. On this day, it was Battalion Chief Joseph Marchbank's turn to be memorialized. He had served 22 years and left behind a 14-year-old daughter, Lauren, an 8-year-old son, Ryan, and his wife, Teresa.
Any of us who've been through a memorial service or a funeral for a loved one, particularly someone as close as a husband, there are times when you don't even hear what's happening around you.
Yeah, you're right.
Did that happen today when the bagpipes were playing?
No, not at all. When they folded the flag, they had the honor guards doing that. It was, and they played, and I heard everything.
What Teresa Marchbanks heard best and loved most was the final farewell. They always line up in the same formation and these days play the same song.
I could have rode like that for a couple of miles because I didn't want it to end. Yeah, I didn't want it to end.
For Pipers, this is a heartbreaking moment.
We're always right in front of the church. They're coming out of limousines. You see the wife, you see the children, and firemen seem to always have a lot of children. And everybody's like lost and hurt, and you're standing right there.
You can't look at the children. Even the wife, you got to look away, because otherwise it'll tear you apart. Really tear you apart.
You never get that, you never walk away from it. It's still a twist in the stomach and choke in the throat and a tear in your eye, no matter what. You think you would get hard to it, but you don't.
But no matter how hard it is to play in front of the church, there is one period even tougher. And it's the one thing they try to avoid. It's what Bill Duffy talked about while waiting for a service to end.
You'll notice a lot of guys in the band aren't going into the churches. I only go in if I really knew the guy. Because it's just too much. It's just too much emotionally to bear to do that.
But several days later, every single member of the band came prepared to do just that. For their beloved drummer, their only member to die at the World Trade Center. Darrell Pearsall was 30 years old. Everyone called him Bronco. He left no parents, no wife, no children. The band was his family, and they gathered, as they say, to pipe him to heaven. Usually one lone piper plays Amazing Grace. Not today. For Bronco, there was a symphony. And when the playing stopped, they all carried their instruments and their love through the church doors. But this is not the end of the story. Life for the band, as for the rest of us, is slowly returning to normal. With every week, there are fewer funerals now, fewer endings, and more beginnings. Only 2 weeks ago, Brian Grogan got a taste of that himself. You may remember Grogan felt like he was living in the movie Groundhog Day, with funeral after funeral after funeral. But not this night. It was his daughter's wedding, and the men from the Emerald Society were there, playing a different tune, making it last a joyful noise. This was one day Grogan hoped would never end.
You know, it sets aside what I've been through and what the rest of the fire department's been through and the rest of the world's been through. This is the greatest feeling in the world.
September 11th, 2001. A day we will never forget as long as we live. an unprovoked sneak attack on America, the slaughter of so many innocents, but also a rebirth of the American spirit, witnessed in the bravery of rescue workers and ordinary citizens, selfless acts of kindness, neighbor helping neighbor. Terrorists set out to destroy America's freedom, but succeeded only in renewing American resolve to defend it, whatever the cost. That is what we saw.